Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. We're here for the View from the Opposition podcast, a day before Newcastle United take on Bournemouth at St James's Park. I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Crocker of the Daily Echo as we discuss this weekend's game at St James's Park. Tom, how are you doing this afternoon?
Afternoon, all good. Thank you for having me back on. Yeah, just gearing up for the long old trip. But it's once a season I can just about manage it.
Thankfully you don't have to do it anymore, I suppose. But yeah, good to see that you're going to be making the long journey up and catching you in the St James's Park press box at the weekend. Big game. Two sides probably going into it in different veins of form. The two sides met just before the end of 2023 with Bournemouth coming out on top. But I suppose just to start with, Bournemouth's form of late been a little bit shaky. The last Premier League win was on Boxing Day. You've had a couple of good cup wins since then. Just sort of give our listeners a little bit of an idea as to how Bournemouth are playing at the moment.
Yeah, it was a brilliant December, which I think is probably first to mention is it sort of dipped off since then. But I think December they won, 6 games maybe, something like that. And it was all absolutely flying. I don't think anyone sort of could really work out why it suddenly clicked and all turned around like it had. And then it's sort of dipped back again the other way now. So heading up to Newcastle in a bit of a poor run in terms of, I think it's 5 without a win in the league. Since Boxing Day, couple of draws in there, but performances have dipped the last few weeks as well, which has been a bit of a concern. They're just whatever was working in December sort of stopped working a little bit in the last few weeks. I think there's a few reasons for that which we can probably get into, but I think it's like I said, they're in different veins of form, and I don't think many people are going to travel up too optimistically now than they might have done a few weeks ago, but with the way the last couple of games have gone, I think it's it looks like a difficult ask at the moment for Saturday.
Mm-hmm. And I think just going back to that game that they had in November, it was a very, very solid Bournemouth performance that day. They really put Newcastle under pressure, a really front foot performance. Is that sort of typical of what you've come to expect of this Bournemouth team, or is it just sort of how it fell on that day with Newcastle a little bit hit by injuries and the fact it was a home game?
Yeah, so I think there's a few sort of factors. I mean, just prior to that, they'd just got their first win of the season against Burnley. I mean, before that, they started with sort of big on winless run to start the season. They got the win against Burnley, which sort of lifted some pressure. And I think they then lost against Man City and Liverpool, which everyone can sort of just sweep away. Really, there's games that you probably lose anyway. And then that Newcastle game, given the situation Newcastle were in at the time, I think was a big factor. They were missing sort of half their squad from what I remember and had a load of kids on the bench and things. And it was just everything. It found them at the perfect time, and everything Bournemouth did on that day, they were brilliant. I think 2-0, it's fair to say, probably flattered Newcastle, to be honest. And then the following week was the same away at Sheffield United. That could have been 4 or 5 as well. And then that just sort of sparked a brilliant run of form throughout till the end of the year, really. That game against Newcastle started the run. I think, like I said, they probably met them at the perfect time. Everything clicked. It was brilliant performance, best they put in at that point so far in the season. It's hard to know exactly how much of it was them being good and how much was Newcastle struggling. But I think Newcastle still got some decent results around that time, even with a lot of injuries, in fairness. So, if you look at sort of the weeks before and after, but yeah, everything worked for Bournemouth on that day, and I think it gave them massive confidence going in forward that they had just beaten a team that was in the Champions League. To be honest, it was a massive scalp for them at that point in time.
And with Bournemouth coming up here at St James's Park, as you say, a long trip for them to make. What have the performance been like for Bournemouth away from home, and also against teams that are maybe above them in the league as well? Have they struggled? Have they changed the style of play at all?
That's one thing the manager doesn't tend to do, is change what he does, home or away. He's quite a big believer in that. I think he did once from memory away at Man City, and they lost 6-1 anyway, so it didn't really make much difference. I think he tries to be on the front foot, tries to play the same whatever game it is, and I actually think they got more points away than they ever home. Last time I checked, I think that's still the stat now, so it doesn't make actually that much difference where they're playing. They try and press teams high, try and be on the front foot. They're going to give chances away, but they're also going to create a lot of chances as well. Like last week away at Fulham, they had 25 shots. I mean, a lot of them were sort of wayward shots, to be honest, and they weren't great in that game. But it just shows the intent they have. They always want to try and fly forwards, whoever they're playing. Sort of highlighted, I guess, mostly when they went to Old Trafford and won 3-0, fully deservedly as well. It wasn't sort of a smash and grab game. They were dominant for most of that game. And that was a run of 3 away wins in a row when they won at Sheffield United and Forest as well. So, it doesn't seem to really matter where they're playing. I think they're going to try and do what they do. And again, there's some games where it won't work. I think they went to probably a similar sort of in terms of the big atmosphere and things. They went to Everton, which they're obviously having a difficult season again at times, but when you go there and Goodison Park is rocking, it can be difficult, and they very much gave Everton a early head start. And if they do the same at Newcastle, I imagine it'll be a similar sort of atmosphere there, and they all fell apart at Everton. So yeah, a couple of the away trips have been difficult, but they'll try and approach it the same way, I think, home or away.
I think, as you say, with that manager and a set style of play, at least they're going to get there, and they're not just going to set up and try and nick a result and park the bus. And it's interesting that you mentioned the manager, because I did want to come on to him, obviously, just to take everybody's minds back. Obviously, Bournemouth, I think it was around a year ago, obviously get rid of Gary O'Neill. As a neutral, and probably for me sitting here, not knowing too much about, Bournemouth, it seemed like a very confusing decision. He looked like he'd done a very good job there, Gary O'Neill. And to obviously bring in Areola, who was a bit of an unknown, was seen as a big risk by many. Now that obviously the dust settled and he's sort of got his feet under the table, what have you found with that manager? How does it compare? And has the feeling around that sacking and replacing him changed at all?
I think I'd say the feeling from the outside and the feeling from the fan base here was very different. I think obviously you look at it, and I can understand why everyone looked at it from the outside, and even from our point of view as well, it was just a big surprise. Gary had done brilliantly, came in as an interim, got the job permanently in December, and kept him up and did well up until the end of the season. So everyone expected him to come back and do the same again. But I think if you looked at a bit closer at the performances, some of them, especially towards the last 4 games of the season, they lost. And I think fans who made saw those games and saw some of the other games thought maybe the squad of the potential could be better in terms of style than what they were showing. I think that was the main reason for what they did in terms of the change. Raiola was obviously he was wanted by the clubs across the world really, and the timing fell right that he left his job in Rayo Vallecano, and Bournemouth decided to take the plunge, take the gamble, if you like. And I think they thought it's now or never. We're going to make this massive sort of cultural change to how we play and how we approach things. It's the first time they ever got an overseas manager in as well. So that was just a big culture change for everyone. And it's took some time to settle. I mean, it wasn't a great start to the season, bit of a worry there, but yeah, the last sort of couple of months really, everyone can sort of see why it's working out. And I mentioned obviously Gary as well, doing brilliantly at Wolves. So it's a rare occasion where sort of managerial sacking has worked out well for all parties, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that obviously you mentioned his time at Vallecano there. It's very well documented that Eddie Howe, during his sabbatical, obviously took a lot of time out of the game and travelled the world to go and speak to other coaches in a lot of disciplines. And one of the teams that he went to actually go see was Raiola's Vallecano, and they had a good few days together. Is that sort of testament to how this manager is seen and the way his setup and his system seen that, yes, it might take a little bit of time to click, but he's clearly very, very highly thought of?
Yeah, I think definitely, like you say, I think Eddie took in a lot during that time away, and the fact that he wanted to go and seek him out, I think says a lot. So Leeds were very keen to bring him in last season. He decided he didn't want to go mid-season. But yeah, that's just an example of teams that were looking at him, and he would have had other offers when he left, and was sort of a free agent last summer. I think the style, like I say, is the main reason why they've gone for it. Really, it's a front foot aggressive style, and it's, like I said, it took a bit of time, and some fans getting used to this new way of working and everything. But he's very much you can see why he's so highly rated, and the way he works and everything. And a lot of it as well so a lot of it's been made of it down these parts, but without his own sort of coaching staff, really, just didn't bring anyone. What brought one fitness coach with him, and the rest of it was all just the current staff that he's had. So it's very much been him implementing that on all them as well as the players, which I think is quite a big deal, to be honest. So it's the fact he's managed to do that in sort of 6 month spell, and they're looking pretty comfortable in terms of the league and things at the moment. I think it's just testament to what he can bring, and it's going to be interesting to see how long he sort of stays here and how his career sort of develops, really, because he's what he did in Spain and what he's starting to do here is quite impressive. Yeah,
it'd be very, very interesting to see whether he can sort of translate that success over here. Just moving on to the players, Tom, that we're going to see this weekend. Obviously, we know that Bournemouth have got a few injuries. away from the likes of Dominic Solanke, who everybody sort of knows about now, who are the danger men that might have just snuck under the radar, but who could really hurt Newcastle this weekend?
Yeah, I was expecting this question, to be honest. I'll try and have a little think through, because it's difficult, because the last few weeks have been tough watch at times, to be honest. But Solanke is obviously the main one, and to be fair, in the last few weeks he's been quite quiet. I think teams are starting to maybe put more attention on him, and he's finding it a bit more difficult to get the space and things that he had before. But in terms of the rest of the team, I think Ryan Christie's someone that's definitely caught the eye. I think it was around this time last year, maybe he was sort of out the team completely, and no one really know which way his career was going, where he's going to fit in, and he's been brought into a new role in sort of a more of a holding central role alongside Lewis Cook, and those two, they've sort of fallen into this position together, two positions they've never really played before, Cook playing the deepest one, and then Christie just sort of as the 8 really. And this season it's just worked out. It wasn't meant to be the plan. They signed players to play those roles, and Alex Scott and Tyler Adams, and they were injured, so they had to find players to fit in. And Christie's definitely, I think he's up there with probably just below Solanke as the player of the season for the club. Just the way he drives, and things under new contract and everything as well. So he's probably the one. Again, the last couple of games hasn't been brilliant for him, but it's been the same for the whole team really. But I think he's probably one that stands out. They've got a lot of talented wingers as well, which is on their day they're brilliant. It's just, again, it's in terms of they're a bit patchy form wise, all of them at the moment. It's hard to nail down who's definitely going to start there. And yeah, it's the rest of the team is. You said there's a few injuries, so it's kind of picking itself really behind that. But yeah, I think Christie and Cook in the midfield has been a key part of why they did so well throughout sort of November, December, and those two have sort of nailed down their place in the team now, so they're probably the ones I'd mention.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's one player that you haven't mentioned there who I've had a keen interest in for a while, given how highly rated it was. I know he's had his injury problems, but that's Alex Scott, a player who was actually linked quite heavily to Newcastle United when he was playing in the Championship. Obviously, Bournemouth won what was quite a contested race for his signature back in the summer. What's he been like so far, given that he was so highly rated when he played at Bristol City?
Yeah, brilliant when he first came. Well, he first came when he was injured, but when he came back and was fit again, he was brilliant for those first 2 or 3 games, and everyone was really, really excited about what he could do, and he was just something so different to anyone else in the team. And then, unfortunately, I think 2 or 3 games late into coming back, he got another injury. So was kept out again for a long time. And then it was, he's sort of back in the team now. But I think they're trying to find the exact position for him to play, because he's been playing a bit further forward. And the last few weeks, it hasn't really been working out. I think he's probably best a bit deeper. But as mentioned, Cook and Christie have been so good, it's hard to sort of break up that partnership. I think over the next few months, he will nail down a place and show how good he can really be again. So he got taken off quite early at Fulham last week. It wasn't his best day. But yeah, the early signs, especially when he first came in and just sort of took everyone's breath away really of how good he was. And that's the potential he's got. Obviously, he's still really young, so he's going to have ups and downs. But you can see why they paid the money for him. I think he's got a massive future in the game. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Clubs like Newcastle and all other clubs, I'm sure, we're keeping a good eye on him. And Bournemouth done well to get that deal over the line, I think.
Yeah, 100%. It might turn out to be one that Newcastle just regret not managing to get over the line. Sticking with the transfer theme, Tom, you come to me and joined me on this podcast in a very interesting week, given that Newcastle have actually been linked with a couple of Bournemouth players in the last couple of days. I just want to go through a couple of them, starting with Lloyd Kelly, a defender who is a free agent in the summer, known obviously to Eddie Howe, and who has been linked with a move away from Bournemouth. What's sort of his future like at the club, and why is it sort of got to the stage where he's a couple of months away from being a free agent, and why do you think Newcastle are interested?
Yeah, there's a few. He's a bit of a complicated case really, in that his relationship with the club and the fans has been up and down. I think since he signed, he signed in a lot of injuries when Eddie was there and didn't really play a lot in the first season. Got relegated and then became captain on Scott Parker and got them promoted again. That was sort of the second season in the Championship. But there was, I think, a time, maybe even during that season, to be honest, when sort of some of the fans turned and I think there's one game in particular where they were like booing some of the stuff he was doing in terms of passing backwards and things like that. And the squad sort of rallied around him at that point. And since then, it's never really felt the same in terms of his relationship with the club. And then Gary O'Neill came in, took the captain's armband off him as well, which, again, it's hard to know exactly how he felt about that, but speaking.
It's never usually good, is it?
For me, it's weird because I mean, obviously he kept playing it and still played quite a lot of games, but from a human level, you'd imagine that must have been a bit of a blow to lose that. So I think that's been in the mind. I think ever since then, it's sort of looked like he was probably going to leave, and despite that, the club maintain they still want to try and get him to sign if they can, and he still plays quite regularly when he's available. And it's it's just in terms of say his fitness has been a big issue this season again. And whenever he's fit, he plays either left back or centre back, but he's missed quite a lot of football with a couple of injuries, and in the summer he nearly left as well. The club were adamant they were going to keep him, and if they need to, let him go for free rather than take 20 million for him. They feel he's that valuable to the team to just make sure they stay up. Firstly, in the summer they turned down money from Tottenham for him, and he missed the game because of the speculation. He was I imagine he would have been quite keen to go there, and it didn't happen. Since then, in fairness, he seems quite focused and happy that he's going to be here to the end of the season. He'll do what he can till then, and then looks like he's going to be a free agent, so he's going to have a lot of offers. I would have thought so. He is, it just feels like it's heading towards a natural sort of parting of the ways. I think there is still a very, very good player in there. Wherever he goes, I'm sure he can still do really, really well. It just feels like because of those reasons I mentioned, it's been like this sort of been on the cards for maybe a year or so, and it's just getting him through to the end of the season now. And if they can try and get into some sort of contract, they'll keep trying. I think 'cause he does play whenever he's available, and managers keep picking him. But I just feel like it seems like he's ready to move on in the summer.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of his quality, I mean, Newcastle fans have been quite receptive to the news that they might be picking him up, but I think they've more been saying that because there's going to be no transfer fee involved. Obviously, with FFP, they've been trying to save pennies wherever they can, rather than thinking, oh, we're going to get this fantastic player. For Newcastle fans listening who maybe don't know much about Kelly, in terms of the quality he possesses, do you think, arriving at a club like Newcastle who have aspirations of getting back in the Champions League, would he be a good fit?
I can see him going to one of these top Premier League sides. I think he's got all the sort of skill set to do it. Obviously, there's clubs in Europe, potentially looking at him as well. So you don't know how much of that is real sort of talk and how much of it is just the fact he's a free agent and everyone links him to everyone. But yeah, I think if he does leave this summer, I think it'll be to one of the top. Like say Spurs were ready to pay 20 million for him, so that sort of says quite a lot straight away. I mean, I still probably think he's best at centre back. He plays a lot of left back just because that's what Bournemouth needed this season, and he keeps getting moved around between the two. And I think he's, especially at centre back, he's quick and strong, and he is good on the ball and good in the air. So I think he will be a good fit wherever he does go. It's just like I mentioned before, it feels like it's just seems like everyone's sort of accepting that he's going to leave here. And so the relationship with the fans, I don't think it's ever fully recovered, to be honest, from what happened a couple of years ago. So, but in terms of him as a player, I think especially as a centre back, I can see him fitting in really well, and he can obviously cover at left back as well and do a good job there, which obviously makes him more attractive for left foot centre back. Always quite attractive, especially in English one. So, there's going to be a lot of I think top half Premier League teams trying to get him in the summer.
Well, that'll have definitely reassured Newcastle fans that they're getting a good player, not just a free agent in the summer if they can pick him up. Tom, another player that's been linked pretty much in all the same stories as Lloyd Kelly this week is Philip Billen, midfielder who I think is valued at around 15 million. Scored against Newcastle at St James's Park last time around. For me, I would absolutely love Philip Billen to come in. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I've seen, as I've just said, I've seen a lot of Newcastle fans very excited by the prospect of picking up Kelly, and others who have said that Newcastle should be aiming higher than Billen, which for me is really disrespectful to him. What's sort of his future at the club, and what do you make of those links to Newcastle?
Yeah, it's again a really interesting case in that he was someone who was out of the team for a bit. I think it was when Jason Tindall was manager, actually. He wasn't in the side for a little bit, in the Championship even. And then Jason Tindall left, and Billing suddenly became sort of one of the main man in the team, pushed further forwards. He used to play sort of just centre mid, number 8 sort of thing. He's been playing further forwards, number 10, and suddenly got loads of goals, and they realised that's probably his best position. So since that point, the last couple of years, he's been one of the main goal scorers in the team, one of the first names on the team sheet, until probably midway through this season. Well, from sort of halfway through the games we've had so far, maybe. So just before the winning run against Newcastle started, I think. Around that sort of time, he lost his place in the team. Not long after that, or just before that, and the team was winning and doing well, and he struggled to get his place back in the team again. And I think that's probably the part of the factors why he's now being linked, because he only signed a new contract. I think it was last summer or something. He's tied down for quite a few years yet. So I think it's probably the fact he's not been playing as much, which would be why he's maybe being linked with a move away. I think he's only started once since October, November time. Obviously now he's banned for 3 games. He got sent off as well. So it's whether he fits exactly the system as well. I think there is a bit of a question mark about that, as where he fits in under this manager. So the players that are playing in that position now are quite different to Billing. So bringing him back into the team, it's hard to see exactly where he would definitely fit, and if the manager definitely fancies him in that role, which is probably why he's being linked. In terms of the price, I'm not entirely sure, because I mean they paid 15 million for him. You'd imagine they'd want to get a profit on that, given what he's done and given the Electrons contract. So I'd have thought they want a bit more than that personally. But if he's someone who's not happy, and the manager's always quite keen to say if the players aren't happy, then they can go essentially. So I think that might play into it a little bit. If that gets to the end of the season, he's still not playing much. But right now, I'd say he is under contract, and if he can get back in the team, then it might be a bit of a different story. But as we sit here right now, he's obviously not played much in the last few months, and he's been sitting out the next couple because of suspension. So yes, I think it's probably natural that maybe his name's going to come up as potentially being one of those who could be available at some point.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one to keep an eye on ahead of the summer. And I mean, another man who's been linked to Newcastle, I feel like we're just rolling them off the conveyor belt. Yeah. But probably the biggest one, and definitely the biggest price tag involved, is Dominic Solanke. Now, Newcastle weren't alone in being linked with him in January. I've seen him obviously linked to Tottenham and other teams like that. This seems like a really, really interesting one to me, because I actually wrote a piece about this in the January window where I said, don't listen to what fans are saying. I actually think this would be a really, really good deal. The price tag might be a bit on the high side, but I actually think Solanke is a really, really top talent. And a lot of fans, again, were sort of saying, is he Newcastle quality? In terms of Solanke, do you feel like he's now getting to the stage where he's earned another big move to one of these clubs? Or, as you were saying earlier in the show, do you think teams will start to find him out and that purple patch is maybe over?
Bournemouth must be doing all right if they've been half the team's been linked with a move to Newcastle. It's not all bad, is it? But it's again, he's in terms of the price tag. Firstly, the club aren't going to let him go for anything less than a really, really high fee, just because again he's an English striker who is under contract for a long time, and he's going to be so hard to replace, because he is basically whatever the team do is all around him, and it has been for the last 2-3 years. Even when he wasn't scoring every week, as he isn't now, you take him out of the team for a couple of games, the team looks completely different and nowhere near as good. So they're not going to let him go for, I don't even really want to put a number on it, but it's going to be all the numbers that are out there and being quoted. I could see it being even higher than that, because they're so desperate to keep him. He's again, the only way to change is if he suddenly pushes and wants to move. But the way he is now, he's, I think, a big factor in if whether he's ready. I don't know, but I mean, it's whether he would want to do it again. He's done Chelsea, he's done Liverpool, hasn't worked out either. Would he want to go and risk going somewhere else, having a month or so without scoring many goals and being on the bench and being out of the team, and then being in a very different position? Whereas now, like I say, he hasn't been great the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's been marked out the game a bit more, but everyone knows he's still going to be first name on the team sheet. So he's in that position where he's guaranteed to play. He's the main man here. The club are very ambitious. They're spending a lot of money. They want to push up towards European places themselves, as the owner keeps saying. So for him to make the move, obviously, if a club in the Champions League or something comes calling, you'd imagine he'd want to look at it. But it's, again, whether he also mentioned a lot about England, and if he gets overlooked now, he might start thinking, is it because I'm at Bournemouth? Is it not because I'm somewhere else? So I think they're the factors as well, which might come into it. But in terms of his quality, I think there's a reason he's been linked with all these clubs. So I don't think it's like he's not good enough to play for them. I think he absolutely is, and what he offers and everything like that. I don't think it was just a purple patch. Obviously, in terms of the goal scoring, not many people are going to keep up that rate of goals But in terms of his performances, I think he'll carry on playing as he has done for the last sort of 2 years anyway, or even longer than that from the Championship upwards. He's been the sort of the main man for a long time. So I can see him. He's going to keep getting linked constantly, I'd imagine, for the next few months. And they obviously have brought in a new striker as well in Anasu now, which some people are saying is he sort of been brought in now just in case Dom does go at some point, because I think he was quite highly rated and scored a lot of goals in the Liga, so he's not going to want to sit on the bench for very long. So that's probably an interesting part as well. So they maybe have got a replacement in mind there already if he does end up moving. But in terms of his quality, I think he's good enough to play for those teams. I just think it's going to cost someone a lot of money, and it's going to possibly have to be him pushing to go as well for that to happen. But right now, it seems like he's very settled and hard to see that happening as we sit right now.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Eddie Howe's obviously signed a lot of these players that they're being linked with, and he saw something in Dominic Solanke when a lot of others didn't. When he obviously, as you say, he struggled to make the grade at Chelsea. He obviously didn't perform at Liverpool. So it'd be very, very interesting to see whether Howe goes for it again. But as you say, the price tag I expect is going to be astronomical, and in these times of hardship that Premier League teams are facing at the moment, it might be a difficult deal to pull off. Just on Solanke again, you've touched on it there, but you say he's sort of fallen out of form a little bit, and I think that's probably going to be music to the ears of Newcastle fans ahead of this weekend. But what's he sort of been like in recent weeks? Because the goal scoring at the start of the season was just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's just more the team at the moment. It's like, I don't know if it's, again, I don't want to sound like they're completely out of form and they're useless. Like, there's been four or 5 games. They're still in a good position. They still picked up a couple of points in that time. It's just they were so good before that, winning every week essentially. And now I don't know if it's because I've got a sense the last couple of weeks that teams obviously it's the second time round playing everyone, and they've now maybe seen what this manager does a bit more. They've seen what Solanke does a bit more, and it's maybe going to take Bournemouth a little while to sort of find a new sort of way to make these players shine again in these games, and whether it's whether teams are just sort of working out what Bournemouth are doing a little bit. Again, there's other reasons some of the goals given away are really poor as well. So it's just sort of a couple of individual errors in that which have made games difficult. But it's just not quite clicked going forwards recently. Not all because of Dom at all. I think the players behind him are struggling a bit for form as well, which a lot of it's going to be down to sort of service and things. And it feels like maybe they're cutting off the lines to him a bit more, other teams now. But he's still not on the top form he was maybe when he scored a couple, didn't he, against Newcastle, to be fair, last time. But I mean, and then on from there, he was brilliant in terms of his goal scoring. But he's still, going to be the main man they're going to look to try and do anything this weekend, I think. So, maybe perhaps not quite where he was a month or so ago when he was he's Premier League Player of the Month, first time the club have ever had one of them. So that sort of says it all for him, really. And it's just the team have found it a little bit difficult to find the results as they did sort of a few weeks ago.
Well, as I say, that should be music to Newcastle fans' ears, and hopefully he saves his resurgence in form until after this weekend. Tom, just before I let you go, I know you've just stressed to say there that you didn't think Bournemouth are completely out of sorts, and it's only been a 4-5 game run. But what's your prediction for this weekend? Do they have any chance of doing a double over Newcastle?
I mean, being honest, I think Newcastle will probably win. I think at home they're particularly strong, and especially at the moment with the way things are going. So obviously, Eddie Howe's not actually won a league game against Bournemouth yet in his 3 previous attempts. So that's something which, I think, I don't know how. I think as he plays them more and more, it will get less of a factor for him. I think last season it definitely played a part in terms of, you could see just emotionally it was a strange situation for him playing Bournemouth. But I think at some point he's going to have to get that win over them. I can see it coming this weekend. I think Bournemouth tend to score. To be fair, they don't. I think it's only once since November or October they haven't actually scored in a game. So I think they could probably nick a goal, especially Newcastle seem to be shipping a few at the moment. So it wouldn't surprise me if Bournemouth got a goal, but I think Newcastle will get the job done, to be honest. I can see it being a home win.
Well, hopefully for us anyway that vision comes true. Tom, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. I hope that long journey up on Friday night or on Saturday morning is okay for you, and thanks very much for coming on. Loved having your company. Tom Crocker there from the Daily Echo, giving us the insight of Bournemouth ahead of this weekend's game. As for us, we'll have Lee Ryder's post-match reaction live on YouTube and on your podcast provider straight after the game. And myself and Andrew will be back on Monday for the Monday show, hopefully talking about a big Newcastle United win. Until then, we'll speak to you very, very soon.